Another day, another dollar. Most of the pond has now been complete. You can see all of the edging stone, all of the edging paving, the feature wall, the stainless steel water blade. This is all in now. So I'm draining the pond down, giving it a light jet, watching it clean, and the next stage for me is to start to build up the 4 planters that are going in the corners. So a closer look here at the water blade. So you can see now that there's a small lip that protrudes from the wall here, and you can just see the LED light up at the back there, which looks lovely in the evening, and this projects beautifully into the pond, so there's no touching of the wall, no sort of dampening of the wall behind, so this shouldn't get stained and end up looking unsightly. Here you can see the bracket for the light, which will be the uplighter that will illuminate this part of the wall and underneath the water curtain. But you can see here, all these 4 corners, I've still yet to build some retainers for the planting zones. So what will happen is I'll end up building a bit of a retainer in the front here, which will join up to create sort of a triangular corner, and this area will be backfilled with shingle and then can be planted up. And it will look lovely, sort of having some plants framing either side of the cascade there. Really pleased with how this is panning out. The stonework looks lovely, and it fits in very nicely with the sort of rest of the garden and the paving theme. So I've still got a fair bit to do, but crack on. The next couple of days I'll get these retainers put in, if the weather's kind to me. And really by the end of the week, this should be pretty much up and running. That's the plan anyway. So it's been a long time coming, but I'm finally going to be able to get this switched on and run today. Got my little helper again with me today. Say hello, Scott. Nature Watch Take 2. Look at this lovely common toad. Hello, you. Been hiding away underneath the rock pile. You've got to be careful when you're clearing up after jobs like this, because it doesn't take long for wildlife to move in. Off you go. Come on. So, toad distraction aside, it's an exciting moment now because I can show you the pond pretty much finished. So it's been fully emptied and cleaned, and I'm just in the process of putting a little bit of water in. I've got a holding tank with all the original pond water that's been reserved, and that's going to go in, but it's going to need a good top up as well. So you can see the 4 planters here have been completed, and these are filled with a fine sort of 10mm shingle at the base, which allows the plants to have something nice and easy to root into, and then it's finished off with this larger 20mm, what's called a gill meal gravel, and that's large enough that the fish aren't going to be able to pick it up and sort of deposit it in the pond, and it creates a nice sort of aesthetic finish as well. But the planters have worked out very nicely. The lighting is in place, so here I'm using the Oasa Luna Power LED set, and what's great about this is you've got a submersible transformer, this unit here, which you can run up to 4 individual lights from. The set comes with 3, and there's a blanking cover here, but this can be removed and you can add a 4th light to it. And that means that you're not trailing lots and lots of cables out of the pond. You've got everything internally, and then 1 exit cable here for the main supply for the transformer. And these are a really bright, I think they're equivalent to a 50-watt light bulb, each one of these. They're fixed onto a bracket which I've mortared into place in the stonework here, and the lights just slide over the bracket like so, and these can be locked into place and articulated with an Allen key adjustment at the side here, so we can change the angle, and then you can pivot and spin it around, which is also going to affect the direction of the beam. So we've got 2 downlighters here which are going to illuminate into the base of the pond, and then we've got 1 uplighter here which is going to illuminate some of this rock face and behind the water curtain. And as I said before, we've got the LED strip light in the water blade as well, which is going to create a lovely feature. My client already had obviously an existing pond with a filtration set, and the pump that was here is an 8,000 litre per hour pump, is absolutely fine for this application, so I've kept this, but everything else has been changed. The filtration set over here has been upgraded to an Oasa Filter Clear 30,000, so that's got the integrated 55 watt UV, a big improvement on the original 11 watts that was here. So all I've got to do now is to finish pointing and then get the pond planted up. Well, today is hopefully going to be the last day of the job, and that sounds terrible. I don't mean that in a bad way, but finishing touches, and hopefully it should be completed. So the pond is up and running. Over the weekend the water's cleared nicely with the filtration system running, and today's jobs are going to be the finishing touches: planting, addressing the filtration and plumbing over there and just getting that concealed and hidden, and then a final tidy up. When the pond is as clear as it is now, before it's planted certainly, but you know, for the next few weeks it's going to take a little while for the pond to really establish, and during these early stages pond line is more evident, cable, the pond equipment, etc. You know, it's all more obvious, and it will take a little while, but eventually this will get covered in a sort of a biofilm, a layer of algae, which will add a bit of discoloration to the pond line and to the pipe work and things, and just soften it all, and it will all blend in and tie in and make it a little bit more subtle. And with the combination of pond plants, water lilies especially here to break the surface, that will help to conceal some of the more sort of man-made bits and pieces in the pond. But the blade is looking lovely. Great film of water there. Very nice. So to make it a bit easier to get these plants into these planting areas here, I'm just dropping the level of the pond down to just slightly lower than shingle level. And that means I won't disturb the gravel too much. There's going to be, you know, still a fair amount of dust and you know, debris which is caught up in here, and I don't want to stir up the pond too much if I can help it. So by just dropping the level down lower than the gravel, it'll make it easier for me to sort of rake aside and plant up some marginals in here. I've got a small selection of plants. Mind your own business, one of my staples. I love using this around waterfalls, nooks and crannies in amongst the stonework, and it's a lovely softening sort of plant that will help to just creep along and soften that stonework nicely. So it's a very easy plant to grow and establish. Not really demanding in any way apart from liking a bit of moisture, and it'll tolerate shade or bright conditions either way. I've got a little bit of water mint here, Mentha aquatica. I don't want to introduce too much of this because it has got a tendency of becoming a bit boisterous, a little bit rampant, but it's a wonderful wildlife plant to have in a pond. Really good for pollinators, attracts lots of bees and other pollinating insects. It's also known for its water purification properties. It's got a very fine root structure which helps to trap lots of the silt. It's a lovely scented plant, but it's a great one for wildlife, so one I always like to include, but it does need to be kept controlled. I've got a dwarf parrot's feather. This is Myriophyllum brasiliensis. Again, a lot of pond plants have a tendency to get a little bit rampant, and this one again can, if left to its own devices, become a bit unruly, but it's very easy to pull out, and this is fantastic in the shallows just to grow in amongst the gravel. That will look really nice. And then over here, just to add a bit of height and some architecture, a couple of evergreen varieties. This is a variety of Juncus. This is Juncus inflexus. Blue Arrow is its variety, which has got a lovely kind of glaucous green colour to it. It's an evergreen plant, quite nice and neat and tidy in its sort of upright growth. So that's a nice addition. And here we've got a variety of Acorus. This is a Golden Delight, a small variety here. Again, semi-evergreen, provide a bit of interest all year round, not going to get too large, and you know, very important keeping plants that are to scale for the pond. For some flowering plants, we've got some pickerel, some Pondateria. This is a small variety with a purple flower, and this is just about to come into flower, so we're going to get some interest very soon. And then also some purple iris. This is Iris versicolor, American flag iris. Purples being a lot smaller than the yellows. 2 weeks ago this was looking stunning, a lovely display. Unfortunately irises are over very quickly, but there's still a few buds on here to open up, so there'll still be a little bit of interest. And then in addition to this lot, I've got some of the plants that were in the pond originally, some yellow flag iris, a small amount of that's going in, and some Caltha, some marsh marigolds. So all of these marginals are getting planted bare rooted, and you can see here that I'm simply pulling aside and making a depression in these gravel sections, dropping the plant in, and I'll just bank up the gravel all around it to hold it into place. I think I said before, but beneath this 20mm gravel I've got a much finer 10mm shingle, and that just makes it a bit easier for the roots beneath this dressing layer to be able to you know, plant themselves in nicely. Now this is the little mind your own business plant here. This is one of my favourites. I love this. Planting couldn't be simpler. I mean, you don't even need a soil or a gravel or anything for it to root into, as long as it's in a reasonably sort of damp area or somewhere which is going to get a bit of moisture. So down here amongst the splash zone of the cascade, now and again when the wind whips this up, it'll splash the back wall, and it will always be a little bit damp. And I've deliberately got some holes. You can see one here behind the curtain of water, and literally all I'm going to do is squidge that in like that. That will find its own way and eventually just creep along all the joints and the cracks. It can be pulled out if it's you know, becoming too much, but it looks lovely having a bit of green foliage on the stone here, just breaking it all up. I like messing around in this gravel. This gill mill is littered with fossils, and I end up spending more time looking for fossils than I do planting. I just found this nice little arthropod, I think it is, shell anyway, gastropod. A nice shell, but I found some lovely ammonites before, not on this job, but you know, in various other sites, and lots of interesting shells and various things. It's quite good fun. Who doesn't like fossil hunting? There's another little shell there, look. Interesting. We've got the pond's first resident frog here, just to be released back into the pond. There you go, little chap. Now that's three legs. I saw him when I drained the pond down originally. There we go. You can see already he's nestled down in amongst the cracks of the stone. Fantastic habitat. Right, well, I've got a few of the plants put in now. I've not really sort of adopted a particular scheme, but I wanted to make sure that I had plants which were certainly to scale for the pond. I wanted a mixture of evergreen plants that are going to give some all year round foliage and colour, because ponds can look pretty boring in winter. But I wanted stuff that was generally going to be quite neat and tidy and reasonably kind of formal and architectural to match this kind of design. Wanted to make sure I had some plants either side of the blade here, which is going to help to sort of frame this, but nothing that's going to get too imposing or too sort of straggly and unkempt, which might then screen this and you know, disguise it. So I've opted for the majority of the evergreen plants this side, so that all year round we've got some sort of interest next to the blade, because this is the feature wall, this is the bit which is really giving the most interest. So I put the juncus here to the left, a little bit of pickerel plant, Pondoteria around it, which will get a bit taller and you know, provide a bit of flower, because the juncus is purely for the foliage, although it is a lovely glaucous colour. Interspersed amongst some of these, I've just put little bits and pieces of bare-rooted parrot's feather here, which will just help to grow over, concealing some of the shingle, and it will grow over the edges here and provide sort of slight rafts of foliage that provide cover for the fish, break up these lines and just provide a bit of interest. So I've got this sort of theme running through most of the planters. Again, over here, another evergreen plant. I've got the Acorus with behind it a bit more pickerel, which is going to get a bit taller. But here, you know, the Acer is kind of the star of the show. This is a beautiful, beautiful Acer Dissectum Crimson Red. We don't really want to disguise that, and actually we can allow this to grow a bit more and sort of creep over. Quintessential pond-side plant, and looks lovely. So we don't want anything to really steal that thunder. Lower growing plants, I mean, there's plenty of space here to add more. It would be nice to get a few more sort of broadleaf plants. I've got a couple of marsh marigolds to plant up, which will provide some very early spring flower, and they can be dotted around in here. Running through the whole thing, you've got little plugs of mind your own business, and this is sort of just at the water line. If the water level drops slightly, some of these tendrils are going to help to wick water up and keep these, you know, soily patches moist. But the stone, the York stone being sandstone itself, will also kind of wick water, and it will always hold a little bit of moisture, even if the water level is quite low. So it should always do pretty well. This side I've got the versicolor, the purple iris with a bit of mint running through it. And again, left to its own devices, the mint is going to send through lots of runners through the gravel. These bits can be pulled out, but it'll also raft out into the pond with some runners, and again provide a bit of cover, conceal some of the cables, etc., and just create a bit more of a natural habitat. There's some lovely smell coming from working with this mint, very nice. And then over this side again, a bit more purple iris, framed either side by some evergreen acorus. A little bit more parrot feather in here as well, but again, plenty of scope to add some more plants in the future. It's not something that, it's not a Chelsea garden. I don't want it to be totally full of plants now. Part of the enjoyment of a pond is living with it for a little while and adding plants and seeing what develops and what establishes. But this is enough to get it going and to provide some interest. Now that's pretty much it for the planting for now, apart from water lilies, and there'll be 2 or 3 nice baskets of lily in here. And that's going to be ample for a pond this sort of size. Planting is cosmetic. We've got the filtration, the pump, which is the life support, which is keeping the pond clean and clear and aerated. So we're not using plants on that basis. We want some marginals for some interest. We want to allow the wildlife, dragonflies and other things that use the marginal plants to climb out of the pond and emerge from the water. So they're useful for that. But really it's cosmetic. And I think on a pond like this, which is pretty formal, it wants to be neat and tidy rather than sort of wild and unruly. So I'll get the pond filled back up to its proper level and I'll carry on with the filtration section. Well, there we go. Therein lies the finish of another job. I'm very pleased with this one. It's nice to do something that's a little bit different from the styles and sort of the informal natural ponds that I would normally do. So this is a good one for my portfolio. Ellie and Des, if you're watching, you've been a pleasure to work for. Thank you very much for looking after me in these very strange times. And I did really appreciate the refreshments, the teas, so thank you. I hope you like your pond. I think I'd be happy with it if it was mine. So, as always, finish with this job. If you carry on watching me, over the next couple of months you'll see that I'm going to do quite a large pond build. So stay tuned in and you'll be able to see what happens with that. Thanks for watching. Cue atmospheric music.